There aren't many characters out there that are so iconic that simply the music makes you immediately remember playing as them. But Master Chief is one of those. In fact, as of writing this, the Chief has played a pivotal role in 6 mainline series games, and his legacy and heroics have spawned many more to critical acclaim. And while the series overall is known for amazing gunplay, spectacular set pieces, and immaculate level design, along with multiplayer offerings, the crux and glue at the center of it all is a character that defined an entire series of consoles and generations for decades. Because the thing is, not every character is so compelling because of their deep introspection or emotional moments. Sometimes a character is so engaging simply because of no other reason than just how badass they are. And in Chief's case, he's about as badass as it gets. Even being a man of little words, this massive Spartan can command a room simply from the reputation he's built. And when you see a battle that looks unwinnable, you almost feel bad for the opponent with an entire army behind them, knowing they're going up against the hardest man in the galaxy. And this level of mystique is only heightened by the fact that the Chief has so little dialogue and refuses to take his helmet off, which greatly adds to that sense of heroics behind the character. The whole reason people weren't happy about Chief taking his helmet off so much in the TV show was because it humanized the character too much, made him too relatable. And while for most compelling characters that would be a huge plus, here, Chief's amazing nature in many ways comes down to how stoic and unknown he is. It lets us paint a picture and story in our own head as to who he really is and why he's so strong, which makes him that much more compelling. For example, take one of the best scenes in the entire series, where Chief is trying to drop a bomb from a ship in mid-space combat and has been forced to go and move and guide it himself. And when he gets to the bomb, you can hear his AI girlfriend and sidekick Cortana come on comms, worried, and exclaim, "Just one question, what if we miss?" And Chief, without giving it a second thought, replies with nothing else than, "I won't." It's moments like this that send shivers down your spine because it truly feels like the man behind the mask is unstoppable. And it makes you feel so cool while playing as this superhero of sorts to save the galaxy. But what makes that connection even more interesting and also deep is on the same token how Chief cares so deeply about the people around him. In even recent titles like Infinite, you can see him paying respects to all of the fallen Marines and soldiers across him. And he stops at nothing to try and avenge those he cares about, like Cortana, when they're in trouble. In many ways, Master Chief is nothing more than the stereotypical stoic and duty-driven man on a mission for anything outside of himself. But because of our ability to actually control him in combat between every cutscene, it really feels more intimate and engaging. And more than anything, he's a reminder that sometimes the most memorable and recognizable characters, the ones we never forget and talk about even decades after their inception, aren't the ones that have amazing arcs or asked us emotionally deep and probing questions. Sometimes the most compelling characters do nothing more than put a smile on our face and make us revel at the possibility of taking up the helm of an absolute genuine beast that's an unstoppable force being thrown at an entire armada of aliens. It will never get old rushing into a battlefield and seeing Marines cheer and rejoice at the fact that an otherwise unwinnable battle is now won, or how cool Chief looks and sounds by saying simple phrases consisting of less than 5 words. And for me, it's why he's one of the most compelling video game characters of all time. Most great characters in games have something that makes them special, something that sets them apart and assures us they will never be forgotten. And in the case of Hellblade, we got one of the most petrifying, depressing, and yet still heroic and engrossing heroes of all time, who has an affliction so rarely touched upon in games. You see, Senua isn't like a lot of other games' protagonists. She suffers from one of the most panic-inducing things a person can deal with, psychosis. And because of this affliction, which she refers to as a curse, she sees and hears things that others don't, constantly enveloped by a world of horrifying sounds and images that pierce her very soul and terrify her to her core. But to make matters even worse, Senua has also just experienced a great amount of loss, because the whole catalyst to her journey, one that takes place in non-chronological order in game to represent the chaos in her mind as well, is that her entire family and lover have been slaughtered. And in an act of revenge, Senua seeks to find Hela, goddess of the underworld in Norse mythology. So along this journey, we are met by not only friends and foes alike, but also constant bouts and battles with Senua's own mind. And more than almost any games out there, Hellblade and Senua herself are a great example of the tumultuous lives that those with mental illness must live, where walls may suddenly start to drip blood and speak, or voices in the back of your head will break the fourth wall and talk with pure omnipotence. There are multiple moments in the game where you will have to watch as Senua claws and gnaws at her own skin in order to shut out the voices, or fights with massive shadow figures or half-human horse hybrids in a gory mess. But despite all of that, what makes Senua most compelling is we don't even know what to believe. Are these spirits and demons talking to her, or even the player at times, even real? Or is everything, potentially even her lost lover, nothing but a fairy tale made up in her own head? Potentially, she was even abandoned by her tribe and is just trying to make a story up in her head to account for all the emotional loss she has gone through. And it's this conundrum at the center of her character that is why so many people have fallen in love with Senua. She stays strong in the face of all adversity and tackles something that could be argued to be so much scarier than any boss or adversary in any other game, her own mind fighting against itself. I mean, really, put yourself in her shoes. Imagine waking up from a nightmare only to find yourself in another living hell of your own making, constantly questioning if you were even awake yet, or simply hearing the sounds of screams deep within your skull with no one able to comfort you in a shared experience. Becoming a prisoner trapped within your own body and soul, begging to be let free. The story of Senua isn't just a story of revenge and sacrifice. It's a story about dealing with the scariest things human beings could ever experience, and coming out on the other side still with a sense of hope and admiration. Because at the end of the first Hellblade, Senua finally expels her demons. She confronts Hela and afterwards banishes the darkness from her soul, while also accepting the voices in her head not as a curse, but rather as a part of her intrinsic nature. Despite all of the struggles she has been through, in the end, Senua still learns to deal with all of the hardships she has suffered at no fault of her own. And more than anything, Senua is just so gripping as a character because she peels back a piece of film and reveals to the world just how debilitating and insane something like psychosis would actually be. A character that, in my opinion, battles with something more terrifying than any monster or person could ever even want to be. Because Senua is an example of staying strong against something people in real life deal with more often too. We don't usually have some big foe to go up against, some giant monster to slay, or a princess to fornicate with. Sure, we have journeys in our lives that are analogous, but that is about as far as they go. In Senua's case, she shows heroism against things that everyone must deal with to some extent on a daily basis. A lack of belief in yourself, a worry for the future, and struggle against what your mind wants and what you've actually gotten out of life, against a mind that constantly can hold them back and in a constant effort to become everything they can. And you can't ask for a character to be much more compelling than that, can you? The Far Cry series is known for many things: insane explosives and gameplay, paragliding through the mountains, and open worlds that I personally find so dull and uninteresting, with endless map markers and quests devoid of real substance. Otherwise known as the Ubisoft formula. Sorry guys, I'm rooting for you. Some of the best devs out there, they just need some more innovation. But maybe more than all that, what defines Far Cry specifically the most is its villains. Recent entries have had famous actors and faces, and with every new release, a big part of the marketing centers around who the main adversary will be. And do you know why that is? It's because of a man from Far Cry 3, who was so good as the villain, it changed the series forever. The one and only Voss, voiced by Michael Mondo from Breaking Bad. During the second you start the game, you are met with a cutscene of you and your friends jumping out of a plane to explore an island, after which seconds later you realize you have been captured by locals and are being held captive in a makeshift cage. The real most terrifying part of the whole opening though comes from the man who greets you in it, Voss. And that's because he is violent, unpredictable, prideful, and most of all, extremely dangerous. Not only because of his willingness to kill, but the charisma that comes attached to it as well. His first words to you are slow and calculated, commenting on how neat of a phone you have, but the second your friend starts to yell through the tape binding his mouth, Voss, without even a second of thought, completely freaks out on him. screaming and berating him, making fun of your friend that he is skinned alive, and without exaggeration, making you his bitch. And more than almost any other villains out there, Voss really sells the personality he's going for. The voice actor here did an absolutely phenomenal job, so much so that the intensity with which he speaks not only angers and infuriates you, but also scares you in a similar way to the real life thing happening too. Because villains in real life aren't actually usually so cool and calculated, holding their breath at every moment. Often actual villains, killers, and bad people in real life are more sadistic, less composed, and easier to anger like we see in Voss. And this rawness and intensity really sells that you're dealing with an actual maniac, not just a nice guy with a good voice playing as one behind the computer screen. Voss truly feels insane to the core, and you can tell without even asking that being on this deserted island for so long with his crew has caused him to turn absolutely mad with insanity. But on the same token, he retains so much of that charismatic style and cadence that let him rise to leadership in the first place. So it results in you absolutely hating this man to the very core, while also being utterly captivated by every moment he is speaking on screen. He's almost similar to Handsome Jack in a sense, but he's more captivating from violence rather than humor. And really, he is just the perfect mix of crazy and calculated, to the point where you fear him not only because you aren't sure what he'll do next, but you fear he might even outsmart you along the way. And it also goes to show just how important an actor's performance is when selling a compelling character. I haven't talked about it much in this video, but none of these amazing and interesting NPCs would be anything without the people behind them putting in the work to craft such a believable fake persona that's really captivating. And while AI will eventually get there and be able to do the same thing for cheaper, allowing more indie teams to make amazing games and characters that last with us forever, for now the actors and their performances add so much to the characters we love. And in the case of Voss, that performance ended up crafting a character that, while insane for being insane's sake, it's so interesting to listen to and understand that you can't look away. Even his philosophy and how he speaks to the Americans, touching on all of the privileges they have had, make you think about those things too as well. But because of his brutality and violence, it always results in you hating him anyways. A character that will last with you for a long time, even after playing. Few characters inspire as much raw glee and euphoria as Kratos, the god of war. Spanning over multiple genres and different pantheons of all-powerful gods now, Kratos has been the main driver behind so much hatred and over-the-top action, but also recently slower and more somber moments in the service of family and deeper values. And it's what makes him so inspiring and versatile as a character, one of the most compelling out there. Because you see, in the original trilogy and spin-offs for the series, Kratos was a man born of pure anger and rage. He would rip the heads off of ancient mythological figures, use his blades of chaos to mince enemies into bits, and most impressively, take on the best and most recognized and powerful gods in the Greek pantheon. And in this first part of his inception, Kratos didn't go a lot deeper than that. He was a man born of revenge and disorder who stopped at nothing to claim his spot atop the throne of all powerful and war-hungry people. The thing that really makes Kratos so fascinating as a character, though, is how that gruesome and ruthless killer eventually transformed into a father defined by stoic and calculated nature. Because it's not often a character as big and iconic as Kratos gets such a massive makeover like this, that not only redefines who he is and his past actions, but in many ways keeps up with the fans of the series itself. As kids, many people loved the God of War games for their over-the-top violence, sex, and gargantuan boss battles. But as those same people grew up and started to have families and become adults, Kratos needed to also become something so much more to stay relevant. So seeing him with Atreus in the newest games is such a breath of fresh air. And regardless of whether you actually like playing the older or newer games, the arc of Kratos as a character and what he's gone through is so heartwarming. Simply watching as he's patient with Atreus teaching him things, or how he can lose his temper but is willing to say he's sorry, shows how much more of a man Kratos has become, going from a warrior to a father. Because being a man is a lot more than just the ability to fight and kill. It's also the ability to understand and cooperate. And Kratos as a character is both. He is capable and as violent as he is stoic. as commanding as he is graceful in leadership as a father and a man. And it feels like nowadays strong leaders are either seen as one or the other, but Kratos again reveals that true power, real leadership, and becoming strong is all about embodying all of those elements at once, both the hard shell and the soft interior alike. And it really is just so satisfying watching Kratos grow in so many ways from a boy to a man, from one series to another, and seeing how great of a father he can be, if not mean at times, a character who is inspiring but not unrealistic, full of his own faults and demons he must solve as well. For me, what makes Kratos so compelling is that he is just a realistic representation of what it takes to become a person of great stature, from sacrifice, leadership, violence when needed, and softness when required. The perfect embodiment of a hero's journey, a man who through his own demons still rises above it all to be there for the ones he loves most, and to inspire greatness out of them as well, like Atreus, his own son.